And at Levys, you were chief engineer, and you engineered sessions, but you also got involved in building equipment.
If we go back to when I arrived at Levys, I'd never, during my interview, I was never shown the studio. I was a little bit dismayed when I saw they had 2 Vortexia mixers and a BTR2 tape machine and a loudspeaker and half a dozen microphones, and that was it. So I really got on very well with Maurice Levy. I mean, he was a brilliant man. And I went to him one day and I said, you know, Mr. Levy, I've got nothing to be chief engineer of here. You know, tape machine, 2 Vortexia mixers and half a dozen microphones. What do I do? He said, well, why don't you design some equipment? He said, we need a bigger mixer. Go and build a bigger mixer. Which I did. It didn't work.
So you bought a kit of parts and you designed it, or?
I designed it and bought the components. Right. And most of the components came from war surplus shops in Lyle Street. Lyle Street is quite amazing then, because the whole of Lyle Street were shops with boxes of components on the pavement outside. But the upstairs were all brothels. And so you had to push your way past these young girls with skimpy skirts and smelling of cheap perfume to get to the boxes of components. Anyhow, so I built this mixer. It was an absolute bloody disaster. It didn't work.
And how did you know, where did you get your designs from? Were they in magazines, journals?
Magazines, books, stuff I'd learnt in the army about how to put amplifiers together.
But it was a disaster. Yeah.
Absolute disaster. So I go to Mr. Levy and I say, I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Levy, the mixer doesn't work. He said, my boy, have you learnt something? I said, oh yes, Mr. Levy, I've learnt a lot. He said, that's fine for me. As long as you've learnt something, I don't mind about the money. And that was the kind of man he was. Levy's was very much what I call a jobbing studio. They would record anything and everything. It wasn't just music. I remember London Fire Brigade wanted a louder bell on the fire engines. So they came in with a huge bell, and we had to record the bell, which they then had a little tape machine in every fire engine with an amplifier. If there was a West End musical, all the artists would come in and we'd record the musical. Probably cut most of the dialogue out and just do the music.
And then wasn't there a facility where people could come in on a Saturday morning to record their own record?
Yes, we did quite a lot of that. Middle-aged women, middle-aged men, no offence to middle-aged people, they would come in with a pianist and they would sing, generally lieder they would sing. And they'd come in for an hour between 10 and 11. Then they'd go home. I'd top and tail the tape, walk over the other side of New Bond Street and cut an acetate, get a taxi round to deliver the acetate. They'd play it and they'd think it was wonderful. Most of it was, actually, and I got quite interested in lieder then. And then they'd give me a £10 tip. And yes, I love that.